Hi everyone, welcome to another Table Talk. Today I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on sort of the relationship between bench testing and field testing. Obviously they're two fairly different things. The bench testing that I do and that a lot of guys do are they're done in very controlled environments, and field testing, a lot of it depends on where you fly, what sort of altitude you're at, air density, how much wind you normally fly in, all that sort of stuff. So all of those factors can have a real bearing on how your plane performs in the air, which is where it's the most important. So these thoughts are just based on my experiences. Fortunately, I'm retired. And I live less than 10 minutes drive from my field. I fly a lot during the week when it's pretty quiet, so I get a lot of chance to, get out there and really evaluate different motors and props and that sort of thing at the field to sort of see how the performance in the air might relate to the numbers that I saw on the bench. Now, obviously, pardon me, if you follow my YouTube channel and my blog and the Park Jet motor bench testing thread on RC Powers, I'm not sure if I would be obsessed, but I'm very passionate about testing the, different motors and all that sort of stuff. And one of the main reasons that I started doing that, and even though my old rig was pretty crude, was, when I first really got serious about building Park Jets, there was, some of the more popular motors, there was just such a wide range of, the manufacturers would say that one thing, and guys would say, oh well, I get this much, and a thrust out of this motor, and it pulls this many amps, and et cetera, and it just got a bit overwhelming for me. And I was still building my planes a bit too heavy, so there would be times where I'd say, okay, well, so and so, or the vendor says this motor and prop should give me 30 ounces of thrust, let's say, and then I'd get out to the field, and it just would be pardon me, would be an absolute dud. So that's why I wanted to see the numbers for myself. So that's sort of why I started doing it. And it's always very, very interesting, because sometimes it's almost like searching for sunken treasure, almost, I guess, if you can put it that way. Because sometimes just a change in prop, or maybe a setting in the speed controller, or different things like that, it's almost like unlocking a treasure chest, and suddenly you have just unbelievable performance. Now, the bench testing, and some of this is obviously biased. When I'm not doing my testing, obviously I spend a lot of time watching RC Plane Pirates videos, Engineer X's videos, reading motor reviews on Mini Quad Test Bench. I'll have links to all those things down below. So the one thing that I will say is that not always, because I've been in this trap, found myself in this trap before, is the bench numbers don't always tell the entire story. They're great because it'll tell you, in a fairly controlled environment, although, you don't have the, any wind or stresses or anything like that, air blowing, I don't anyway here sitting in my little man cave. But it'll give you a generally good idea that, okay, this motor and this prop pull X number of amps, produce this many watts and this much thrust. And one of the things that I always look for is, is the amps, because I want to make sure that I'm, when possible, operating within the, if I know that the motor is rated for 45 amps, I want to make sure that I'm normally operating under that amp limit, just to get long-term durability out of the motor. And then making sure that, what I see, that I can match the correct speed controller and the correct battery that will be able to provide the the power that the motor, prop, and prop combo require. So what kind of inspired me to do this video was I was out flying my red MiG the other day, which if you've watched some of my videos, you've probably seen it in action quite a bit. And I was flying with this Sunny Sky Edge 2305 2800 motor. Now this is an interesting motor because it on 3S with the 6x4 EPC gas prop, it was producing about 1,065 grams of thrust on the bench. And then consistently when I've been at the field, it's felt like that it's actually producing better than that, if that makes sense. It just seems that, you know, when it gets out to the field and is able to, you know, to really unload, and it's not trying to move the planet Earth essentially being strapped to my thrust stand here, it really seemed to perform better than what those numbers would dictate. Now with the 6x3 EMP prop, it actually on the bench produced 1,250 grams, so we're talking almost 200 grams more thrust on the bench. Now one of the things that I found with bench testing is it doesn't always normally tell you, give you a really good indicator of what your torque is going to be, like, you know, that ability to sort of, you know, muscle through a little bit of wind or a little bit of drag, you know, like certain motors and props, you know, in dead calm conditions, this thing runs like an absolute thoroughbred. You know, there's just nothing stopping it. It really, really, really motors. But what I found was I was flying my red MiG, and the wind started to pick up a little bit, and it started to feel a little bit sluggish. And then, you know, when I was trying to accelerate, it was almost like the motor and the prop were bogging down a little bit and just didn't quite have the oomph to sort of punch through that wind. So anyway, I flew a couple or so batteries just to make sure that it wasn't the battery, and then I thought, well, why don't I just try, because I had flown this motor quite a bit with the 6x4 APC gas prop. So as soon as I popped this prop on, I lost maybe a little bit of top end speed, but then I found that the prop provided me with this prop provided me with more you know, muscle to kind of maintain my speed and my momentum through the wind and that sort of thing. So, you know, that was a situation where, although theoretically on the bench this thing is cranking out 200, almost 200 grams more thrust, it didn't necessarily at the field, given, you know, some adverse conditions like a little bit of wind, it didn't necessarily give me sort of the performance that the numbers might dictate. Now, that's for this motor. I've also, for example, the Emax 2306-2750, which has, thus far, although it's not the most powerful, it on 3S, since I started with the GEP RC motor, it seems to be the best all around, because it you know, the numbers that it produced on the bench with both of these props, I see those very, very close at the field. So again, it depends a lot on the motor. You know, when the motor and the prop as they work together when you get out to the field. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, and I've fallen into this trap myself before, is don't necessarily always get locked in when you're reading, say, my spreadsheet, or you're watching a video and you see these super high numbers. Don't necessarily get locked in and say, okay, well, there's, you know, no doubt I'm going for the 6x3 EMP prop, hands down. That's the only prop that I'm going to run. You know, especially if it's a newer motor that you haven't flown with before, is, you know, look at, you know, my spreadsheet, or you know, a video that Engineer X or RC Plane Pirate has done, and maybe sort of pick a couple of props out of that bunch, and then take them out to the field and give them a try. Because, you know, the field is obviously the ultimate test laboratory, and how you want your plane to perform with, you know, we could both have the same motor, speed controller, battery, same plane, everything else, and I might like a particular prop different from what you like because of just how I like the plane to feel and how I like it to perform. And, you know, other than, say, you know, a 6x4 by 3 master air screw prop, which is about $6 or $7 US, you know, most of these props are pretty inexpensive. So, you know, you can pick a few up to experiment with. And you don't necessarily have to, you know, if you have, you know, like I said, other resources like RC Plane Pirate, Engineer X, Mini Quad Test Bench, if you're trying out some of these quad racing motors, and Ryan Harrell has tested them, you know, you can go and look at those numbers and give you, you know, kind of give you a good idea, but then take it out to the field and just see how it, you know, how it fares compared to the numbers, and how the experience feels. Because not always with every motor and with every flying condition is the prop that generates the most thrust, in my experience. Again, this is just me talking here. will always provide you the best performance. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, well, for me, for example, now that I'm getting close into summer, I live close to the ocean and some mountains, so I always tend to have a little bit of a breeze, late, starting sort of late morning through the day. So I may have to pick a prop that's going to just allow me. I may not necessarily have the best top end speed, but it's going to give me the best overall performance, if that makes sense. And sometimes you just never know. Like you just you take a prop, you take a plane out and you put a new prop on it, and it's like, wow. Again, like I said, it's like hunting for sunken treasure. You find that key and you unlock the treasure chest, and then boom, you think like, wow, why wasn't I using this prop all along? The one thing that I would say again, and I've said this many times before, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but even if you don't want to invest in a thrust stand like this, if you want to experiment with some props, motors, that sort of stuff, is spend a few bucks and get yourself one of these watt meters. I'll have a link down below. Banggood sells one for about $12 or $13. You need to put your connectors on either end so that you can put it between your battery and your speed controller. Because what this will do is it will give you instantaneous feedback on what your power setup is doing. Because obviously you might have a different battery, a different speed controller, different brand of prop. You live at a different altitude than me, that sort of stuff, and you might find that you take it out of the field and say, oh God, I listened to that E3 Scott guy and I read his spreadsheet, and this motor is performing like garbage. So what this will do is it will tell you exactly what's going on. It won't tell you obviously the thrust numbers, but it'll tell you how many amps you're pulling, that sort of stuff, and how many watts you're generating, and that sort of thing. And why this is valuable is then you can find out that given your conditions, your motor, and your power setup, is that maybe you're pushing your motor way too hard, or your speed controller is not sufficient to handle it, or your battery can't generate enough amp discharge to handle your situation. So yeah, I mean, for $13, I wish, I've said this before, I wish that early on in my park jet career I had at least bought one of these so that I could better understand what was going on with my prop motor choices. Because long term I probably would have saved myself some batteries, speed controllers, motors. So for $13 you may end up saving your money, saving some money long term, and then you'll know exactly what's going on. So yeah, so there we go. Like like I said, the bench test numbers are good. They're a really good guideline. They'll put you much quicker into the ballpark if you want to experiment with a new motor prop. They'll put you in the ballpark much quicker as to whether you can actually run that prop on that motor. Whether your speed controller is going to be able to handle the amp draw, and whether your battery is going to be able to deliver the amps that you need. So those are important things, because if you say, oh God, I watched this video and this motor looks so powerful, and you go out and buy a motor but you don't buy, say, a different speed controller or a different battery, and you go fly it and you come down and your speed controller is smoking hot and your battery's puffed up like a football, you want to make sure that you have some idea of what you're getting into if you want to play around with the motor. And like I said, even if current systems, if you just want to play, like I said, just picking up a few props on sale, different props, and think, oh, I'll give this a try, or I saw RC Plane Pirate do a video with this particular prop and it looked pretty good to me, give it a try. Having one of these watt meters will tell you exactly what's going on, and long term save you a lot of money. So there we go. So I guess the bottom line is, while the bench numbers are a great thing to have, don't always rely on the fact that the top end thrust numbers are going to give you the absolute best performance, depending on the conditions that you fly in, where you live, that sort of stuff. So experiment with a couple of different props, and you may also find that even though, for example, this prop may not on the bench provide as many ounces or grams of thrust as this prop on the same motor, it just gives you a better feel and allows you to have the flight performance that you want. So anyway, I know that a lot of this maybe was a bit opinion based, but it has I will, in all honesty, I'm just telling you, I do fly a lot, and I do a lot of these things is I like to go out and evaluate, and get the numbers off the bench and then see how those translate to the field, because you don't always get the numbers from the bench translating to that equivalent performance. And again, it depends on the motor. Like I said, that sometimes this motor is different than the 2306 2750 Emax motor, which seems to be consistently good on all of these, both of these props, on 3S and even 4S with this prop. And it just depends on the motor when you get it into field conditions. So yeah, so don't be scared to experiment. Like I said, props are one of the cheapest ways to to sort of unlock that treasure chest and find the performance that you particularly like. And if you've got some numbers from other people's testing, that'll already give you an idea that, okay, I've got a good speed controller and battery that can handle what this motor and prop are going to require. And then just get out to the field and experiment. I mean, prop change takes a minute or two, and away you go, and you just never know what you could experience. What I would say is that anytime you put props, and because I learned this lesson the hard way, make sure that you balance all the props before you put them into your field box. Don't just pull a brand new prop out of a package, stick it in your plane, because you could end up vibrating the living daylights out of your plane, and causing yourself some issues, and it's just not going to operate as efficiently. So anyway, folks, there you go. There's my thoughts, my philosophies on the relationship between bench testing and field testing. So I encourage you, get out there and experiment. That's, like I said, it's one of the fun things that I like to do, and you just never know. You're going to turn that corner, and you might find a prop that and setup that works just awesome for how you like your plane to fly, and just have some fun, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. So anyway, like I said, check the comments down below. I'll have links to the websites and YouTube channels that I mentioned, as well as this very inexpensive watt meter from Banggood. So thanks very much for watching. Blue skies, calm winds to everyone. Park jet noise, the other sound of freedom, baby. Take care.